Hi everyone. Welcome back to Adair Live. We'll be hosting these every week, featuring different experts from the home building industry just to help you understand just the ins and outs of building your dream home on your land. My name is Gabby Gately, and I'm part of the marketing team here at Adair. My co-host today is Jay Sowers. Jay has worn many hats during his time at Adair, and he has a wealth of knowledge when it comes to building, just being in the home building industry. So excited to have you here, Jay. How are you today?
Doing well. Thank you very much. I'm excited for another week of Adair Live. So can't
Yes,
wait for the questions.
me too. Yeah, so today we're just going to be talking about site development and we'll be monitoring the chat. So just let us know where you're watching from. If you are building a home, just talk about maybe what you're building, tell us maybe part of the home building process you're in, whatever stage you're in. We want to hear from you. So, yeah, if you have any questions, put those in the chat and we'll just kind of get rolling with what we have. So, usually I see a lot of kind of comments on our posts asking just about land. And since we are on your lot builders, that our homeowners provide their land. So what if our homeowners don't have land? What do they kind of do then?
That's a great question, Gabby. And I agree with you. We do get that question quite often. But at the end of the day, when you interact with any on your lot builder, the vast majority of on your lot builders shouldn't require that you have property. So here at Adair Homes, I mean, honestly, Gabby, I'd say more than half of the customers that we interact with don't have land.
Yeah.
And so there's no reason at all to not contact a builder of your choice and go in and figure out what they have to say. And I would say that a lot of builders would end up having resources for those of us that don't own land. But I'll just say in summary, do not let land hamper your decision from coming in and talking to a builder and gaining more knowledge.
Mhm. Yeah. Do we have, I guess, maybe any resources for our homeowners or customers, maybe looking for land or kind of helping them through that since could be a different process for new homeowners?
We do, yeah. There, I would say uh, here at Adair specifically, we have good relationships with local real estate professionals. We network with realtors, with pocket listings, and lots that are also available. I would say that any realtor that you would like to work with could put you on what's known as a drip campaign. So you say, hey, I want to build in this general area, and these are my requirements, whether it's size of property, size of lot, I want an acreage, I want a city lot, and this is my general pricing, category for land. And then any realtor could put you on a drip campaign, so that way you would get instantly notified once one of those properties, hits the MLS and is available. But yeah, definitely reach out to your builders. They should have access to helping you find land.
Perfect. Yeah. And then kind of once they get their land or have an idea, what kind of goes into preparing the land for a new custom home?
That's where the magic happens, Gabby. So just because we find a piece of property or a customer owns a piece of property, right? We now have to understand the cost, right? So think of it like this. Some families want to build on acreage. And so if you're on acreage, statistically, maybe we're having conversations around wells and getting septic systems installed. And where is the closest power pole from here, right? Because I'm building on 5 acres.
Mhm.
So those conversations are very different than those of us that want to build on more like residential lots, where sewer and water, more times than not, are actually plumbed into the lot, and the power is right there on a power pole at the street. So don't. There's no reason for us to overthink it. It's just how much does the development cost specific to this lot that you're thinking about building on, and any builder that you're doing business with should partner with you on helping understand the costs of developing that property.
Okay, yeah. And then kind of with that same question, since we also do build on their lot or on their land, who's kind of responsible for preparing at least the land? Is it like the builder or is it the homeowner?
I would say, Gabby, that is kind of a conversation that can go two different ways. There's a lot of builders out there that literally just grab the land and for one swift price, they just develop it and build the home on it. Just know that if that's the case, builders are normally going to margin those activities, right? Like excavating the property, etc. There are other builders that do more of a kind of a joint house building agreement where the homeowners are a little bit more involved, and the homeowner is actually responsible for developing the property under the builder's guidance. Okay. And I would say that there's even a third conversation around more of a hybrid program, right? With consumers and the builder that they're choosing, and what items is the homeowner going to do, and what items is the builder going to do. But regardless, you want to meet with your builder and just have a very good understanding of who's going to do what. And if I'm the customer, what is my responsibility specific to developing the property?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Same with obviously kind of still preparing, and then with the homeowner, how kind of are like bids obtained like through this process?
Okay, that is a great question. So as we may or may not be aware, you can't call an excavator, for example, and say, hey, do me a favor, Gabby, would you please get me a bid to excavate this property? Because the excavator is going to look at us and say, well, what do you want me to do? I mean, where's the driveway going in? Where's the home even going to be placed? Mm-hmm. Oh, and how large of a home do you want? Is it a big foundation single story? Is it a smaller 2-story home? I mean, so to answer the question, what your builder should do for you is they should come out, visit with you on this property that you either own or are thinking about buying. And we want to get clear on what you as the customer are ultimately trying to accomplish. The builder will then draft what's called a plot plan. And that's nothing more than just a aerial view of where the home will be situated on the property, how long and wide and deep or narrow the floor plan is. So now, Gabby, we can physically hand that plot plan to an excavator and say, okay, how much is it going to cost to do all the dirt work and excavation services for a project specific like this? And now an excavator can be like, okay, let me go out to the site and I will get you those costs pulled together. So that's generally the process, is understanding what you want done on the lot, work with your builder to get a plot plan created, and now we can take our time and start obtaining written bids from those developers that we need to get bids from.
Yeah. And then with all the things that kind of go into your site preparation, a lot of, I guess in the different areas, at least that we build to, a lot of areas have different processes or different companies kind of that will help you through it. Do at least we as Adair, maybe other builders, have like a list of companies that we have worked with in the past that like we could provide to our homeowners to at least help them along the process?
Yes, and I would say that's I think the point of that question being asked is that we just don't. A builder would never want a customer to be scared on like, oh my goodness, I've never done this before. How do I do this? I don't even know what an excavator is, let alone who to call. So just know that it's very simple. Every property needs excavation, right? Water, power, sewer, building permits. at a very high level, right? And yes, any builder that you engage with, the assumption is that they've done this many, 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 many times before. And so they should have a whole list of contractors that they've worked with in the past and quite frankly have relationships with. We just need to reach out to them with the consumer and get bids for their services specific to your land.
Wow, that's at least nice to hear. I know I would have no idea how to do any kind of site preparation, at least by myself. So having kind of the builder back you up would be great.
Absolutely. And I would say, Gabby, most customers are in that camp, right?
Mhm.
So, yep.
I know I've also heard a little bit kind of with these contractors, just because there could be a couple that you are using for your site development. It can be difficult to get a contractor to at least call you back sometimes. So does Adair assist in any way, or there's like any advice you could give?
Yeah. So I would say that one of the larger frustrations of customers is that I'm trying to get a bid for this well, or I'm trying to get a cost to understand how much my septic system is going to install or to be installed. And the contractors may not be calling them back, right? That's normally a function of a very, very busy home building market, right? As the housing market slows, right? It's very cyclical, as we know. Then now contractors aren't quite as busy, and so they're more apt to call customers back to bid projects. All that to say is that if you have a relationship, if the builder has a relationship with that septic installer, if you will, then even in the busier markets, Gabby, the customer is still able to be served because it's not Joe customer calling the septic installer. It's, hey, I'm a client of, in this case, Adair Homes. And then that septic company is like, oh, okay, yeah, Adair's one of my current clients and I want to take care of them. So sometimes it is good to reach out to those contractors that already have existing relationships with your builder that you've chosen to do business with.
Perfect. I know that can take a lot of stress off of when people think they have to do everything by themselves, but the builders there like back them up a little bit.
Yep.
Let's see. I guess kind of with going into more like costs for land and site development and everything. What kind of happens if a homeowner were to estimate a site development cost, fund a loan, and then costs kind of go up for any reason? How would they kind of pay for those overages?
It's a great question as well. And please understand that the system is built to protect the customer. So what happens is that normally the contractors are going to do the best job that they can at bidding those jobs accurately, right? I would say it is somewhat rare, right? But it does happen where, for excavation, for instance, now that the excavator is really getting into the property, there's some larger boulders or whatever that end up being in their way when they're trying to dig your foundation, as an example. And now the excavator needs a little bit more money because they have to spend another day or two on your job site dealing with that unknown factor. So the way that works is that every builder should have what's known as contingency funds built into the contract. Okay, and or the lender that the consumer is funding their loan with should also have contingency funds. And whether it's on the builder side or on the finance side, those are actually very, very specific things that have to be done to protect every customer. So great question, Gabby. Those are already in place.
Perfect. And then kind of going off cost again, is there any sort of guide to kind of help pull together like the total site development cost that a homeowner can have?
There is. Yeah. If you come in and you meet with any builder, they should have guides on, I know your property is specific, right? Because I promise no two properties are the same. Well, unless they're side by side in a subdivision or something. But but arguably, what happens there is that the builder should have a very specific guide, document, or spreadsheet on, okay, these are the things that we have to get our mind around to be able to develop your property. So we just want to understand, is it a septic system? Is it a well? How much does that cost? What type of septic system? So yes, Gabby, any builder that you do business with should have very specific guidelines on what needs to get itemized or cost out to understand developing a property.
Okay, perfect. And then when kind of on a site evaluation with an Adair superintendent or just a builder, what are kind of the cost drivers that we may be looking for?
It's another good question. You came prepared. So I would say that arguably, I would say as a builder, we try not to ask our customers to overthink it, right? Everything is pretty straightforward, and we're going to get costs pulled together. But there is one thing that when you use the word cost driver, the one thing that drives cost in a build is topography. Okay, how steep, how sloped is that lot? So, for instance, if you're connecting to city sewer, it depends on the jurisdiction. But the jurisdiction or the sewer district, they're going to tell you exactly what the cost is to connect to that sewer system. And it's going to be X number thousands of dollars, right? Or let's go get a septic system installed. Well, septic systems can be more expensive and generally are more expensive than sewer connection fees. But now you never have a sewer bill each month, right? So, okay, I'm net, maybe it's net zero, or depending upon how long I live in the home, I'm going to actually save money on that. But when it comes to topography, Gabby, that's the thing that drives cost, because how is this driveway going to get up or down into that home? The builder now has to pour very large, hypothetically, tall stacked foundation walls. In some cases, we have to do garages under or daylight basements. And though, again, topography is the number one thing to look out for when it comes to cost. But all that to say, the builder's still going to pull the cost together for you before you sign contracts.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, that was going to be my next question of if we know kind of like the total site development cost before making any sort of buying decisions.
Yeah, I would say that anybody listening on this call or watching this video, if a builder says, yeah, let's just go ahead and sign contracts today and we'll figure it out later, I would ask you to run, okay? I think it is a fair and reasonable request that any builder that you're working with is going to be able to pull a total project cost together. So that way, you and your family can make an educated decision on, is this project and the floor plan that I want to build on this lot that I'm thinking about building on, is it even feasible, right? And maybe I don't need exact pricing up front, which is very hard to do from a builder's perspective, but at least get me close. And every builder should be able to do that for you.
Okay, perfect. And then kind of circling back around to the beginning when we're talking about like owning land, if the homeowner didn't own land, kind of what is the process of getting, I guess, a property evaluation and really starting the feasibility phase?
So this is one of the things that can be scary for some customers, but we need you to make an offer on the property. Okay. Now, please hear us, is that from the builder's perspective, if you're making an offer on this property, because in your example, we don't own the land, you're not buying the property, right? By standard real estate procedure is we would normally put a little bit of cash right up front, and that's dependent upon the well, I'll just say the realtors and what the feasibility or earnest money agreement is. Normally, it can be $500 to, in some cases, a few $1,000s. But ultimately, Gabby, what happens in return is the owner of the property then says, okay, let's enter in to this feasibility phase. And we're going to agree to 15 days. We're going to agree to 30 days, right? And so the market, the property is essentially pulled off the market, let's just say for 30 days. And then on day 29, you and the family have to decide, okay, based on everything I now know about this property and all the research that we've done over the last 29 days, do I want to proceed with this lot? And if the answer is yes, then you essentially sign, forego the earnest money, right? And now you move forward. Okay. Or you hit the eject button, in which case you get your earnest money back, right? So no harm, no foul. And then the lot goes back on the market. If for whatever reason, you're substantially over your initial budget.
Okay, yeah.
Yep.
And then kind of at least wrapping up my questions, because there's a couple questions in the chat too that we'll get to. But with the land, does the customer get to decide on the house placement, or does it kind of depend on what the property looks like?
Oh, absolutely. So that's one of the coolest things about building on your property, right? So if you're doing business with more of a conventional builder that builds on lot number 47, right, floor plan A, yeah, you can select what color countertops you want in some cases. However, the home placement and orientation, it just is what it is. But when you're dealing with other custom builders that build on land, Gabby, that's one of the best parts about it, is that I want the back of my home faced this way to capture those views or this sunset or whatever the case may be, right? You're a big solar, fan. And so I want a lot of roof structure facing true south, right? So I want my home oriented that way. Okay, awesome. So yeah, you as the customer, when you're doing a custom on your lot build, the customer has 100% control over the home placement and orientation. That being said, we do have some limitations from the jurisdiction that you got to stay within certain building setbacks, or there could be certain lot coverage, jurisdictional things that the builder would want to help you out with.
Okay, perfect. I know I've been to a couple houses where their view is just extraordinary. So you have to face the house that way.
Yep.
Let's see.
Yeah, looks like we have a handful of questions today. I love it.
Let's see. Dwight asked if if they already had water, power, sewer, and a driveway, what would kind of that cost potentially look like?
Yeah, so Dwight, that is a good question. I would say that when you ask specifically the fact that you already have water and power and sewer at the driveway, what would the cost be? Is you would need to make somebody would need to make phone calls down to the building jurisdiction, and they will give you a very specific cost on what it's going to take to tie into that sewer lateral, or they're going to give you a very specific cost as to what it's going to cost for the water department to come out and set that water meter, right? And charge for those connection fees. Now, after you've paid the jurisdictional fees, or you have an understanding of how much those utility companies are going to charge to connect, then we still have a little bit of cost, because how far is your new home from that water meter, for an example? And so there will be some trenching and some additional costs to get it up to the home. But again, you're going to be one of the easiest ones to get that budget for, because it's just very simple phone calls with known costs.
Perfect. And then Joe asked, what kind of obstacles are, we finding right now with site development?
Joe, that's a good question. I have to say, when it comes to obstacles. We already discussed one obstacle on, getting the subcontractors on site in a timely manner to bid the projects. I know that has been a little bit of a rub in our current state of housing, if you will. But I think that with the relationships that the builders should have with the trade partners, that shouldn't be that big of an obstacle. And I would also say that obstacles can be site specific. One property on one side of town could just be a breeze, right? Kind of like Dwight's property, just an absolute no brainer. Let's just make some phone calls and understand these costs. Whereas a lot on the other side of town could have some obstacles. Maybe we have some access issues. Maybe we have a utility easement running through the lot that none of us knew about. Maybe we have some building setback issues or some maximum lot coverage issues that we need to mitigate, right? So it really is site specific, in my opinion. All more the reason to connect with your builder and put your heads together and really get your mind around that lot and its feasibility to build
on. Brent asked, what if there's a manufactured home already on the property? What are the options? And then does a person have to sell or otherwise get rid of the home?
Okay, Brent, that's an awesome question. So I would say it depends, but generally, if you're replacing a manufactured home, those customers are going to save a sizable amount of money. Why? Well, the driveway is already there. The power has already been ran to the site. The assumption is that we've already got water on site and sewer or septic. Okay. And your building permit fees should be considerably less because your builder should apply for what's called a voluntary replacement dwelling permit, not just a big old standard building permit as if a home's never been built there before. So you're going to save money all the way through. However, there might be costs that we're going to need to consider, such as the septic system, right? If that septic system was installed back in the 70s, as an example, there are chances that it may not be up to current code standards. So does the septic have to be replaced? Do we have to update just the drain fields? What do we need to do to get that septic system, up to par for new residential construction? But all that to say, you're going to save a ton of money versus developing raw land. Second part of your question is do I have to sell the home first? And I will say it depends. So if we're building a brand new home, or a builder is building a brand new home adjacent to the manufactured home, well then no. Live in the manufactured home all the way during your build. But what's going to happen is most jurisdictions are going to provide you and your builder what's known as a temporary certificate of occupancy. And they're going to need that manufactured home. Now that your new home is built, they're going to need that manufactured home to be quote unquote decommissioned. And different jurisdictions have different requirements on what it means to decommission a manufactured home. So I would want to refer you to those guidelines. Or if you want to sell the home at that point, your builder should have resources to help you out with companies that do manufactured home brokeraging. But great question.
And then Brent also asked if the homeowner needed to provide temporary power and water during the construction and how they would go about doing that.
I'm sorry, what's that? One more time?
I guess this is kind of more when I think building the actual home, if they needed to provide temporary power and water during the construction of their home.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, temporary utilities. Yes, temporary utilities are required during construction, and those are both. Those should both be very simple utilities to add. Usually, it costs $1,000 or less, depending. for the local PUD or a local electrician to set, a old beat up rusty power pole on the site that, your contractors and your builders contractors can now start plugging in extension cords for, right? And then the same thing with water, because we got to have water on site, especially during foundation. But those are just, again, old beat up, hose bibs that they get put on either the water meter or off the wellhead. So, yeah, I see Dwight's anxious here. I love it, Dwight. He's saying, Jay, just answer our questions. So, Gabby, you want to go to his here for a second?
Well, I think that was about the water, power, and sewer and driveway, and then they also added with a well and septic also.
Got it. Okay. Yep, I see that. So Dwight, yeah, it appears that your initial question was, just to be clear, is if we have water, right, power and sewer, and then you said, oh, I need clarification if it's well and septic. So anyway, now you're saying, oh, yep, you already did. But anyway, for everybody else on the call or on the video, it doesn't matter if you have city sewer or city water, right? That's more of a phone call to the jurisdiction. In Dwight's case, if you need to drill a well or you need to get a septic system installed, now we have to make a phone call to a local licensed well driller or septic installer. Just to double down on Dwight's question, is there could be some cost associated, because what happens is that to get a true bid for a septic system, right, Dwight might need to spend $1,000, $1,500, it depends, to have some perk tests, right, dug at the property, because there are many different kinds of septic systems, and a soils engineer or a septic designer needs to understand, okay, what type of septic system can be designed on Dwight's property. So there could be some upfront costs there for Dwight, but at the end of the day, that septic designer will give him a septic design. And now Dwight and his contractor can say, here, septic installer, this is the septic system that I need to get bid on. Okay. Wells are even easier, right? Wells don't cost any money to get a bid. What happens is that you or the contractor could call a local licensed well driller. They will look in what's called the state well logs, and they'll look at Dwight's property. And the assumption is that there are wells in that area, right? Every well that's been drilled, well, at least for the last 20 or 30 years, has to be entered into the state well logs. And what happens is that a licensed well driller who has access to those logs can say, okay, Dwight, these are the 7 wells that are within a reasonable distance of your lot. Here's where we believe the water table to be. This is what kind of rock the driller had to go through to get to that. And so, Dwight, we're going to give you a worst case scenario well bid for X number of dollars. But now Dwight has a clear understanding of what his, septic system and well would cost.
Perfect. Let's see. I think. Wow.
Yeah, I love Julie's comment. Yeah.
Yeah, I think if anyone has any more questions, you can ask them, but that was a lot for today.
Yeah.
Some good questions.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Gabby, very much for hosting this. I really appreciate it, and I really enjoyed answering the questions.
Yeah, same as you. Thank you for being here with us, Jay. Thank you to all of our viewers and everyone who asked us questions. We will see you again next week for the next Adair Live.
All right. Take care.